Hey there. I told you all that I would create a sample presentation to help you out with next week with what my expectations look like. So I've gone ahead and done that using King Henry VIII. He's the same historical figure that I've been using through all of my samples. But remember, he's not actually in the movie. I just used him so I didn't steal one from you guys. I did mine using Prezi just because I think it looks super cool. This is the timeline feature. I also wrote a script for myself. You can see that here. It's about size 22 so that when I print it out, it's really big and easy to see. You will notice that mine is in complete sentences, even though I told you guys it didn't have to be. Since my research was a little different than yours, I didn't do the research all last week. I went ahead and did that so that I felt more comfortable planning out what I wanted to say. You're more than welcome to do that, but you don't have to, and you're not required to turn your notes in. You're being graded solely on the actual presentation. So yes, this does matter, but it's not a requirement for you to submit. So they can look however you want them to look so that you can be proud of your presentation. So let's get into this. I will be using a timer to kind of practice. I've done this actually, and this is probably my fourth or fifth time going through it just to make sure that I get it right for you guys. I would highly suggest doing the same thing where you're rehearsing at home using some sort of timer, whether it's on your computer or whether it's on your cell phone. That way you can get your timings down and make sure you can kind of cut out things, because I've cut out things off of my script to kind of cut down the time. And you can add things if you know that you're going to run late. You know, your time limit is bare minimum 1 minute on the upper side for the maximum 4. If you go a little over, it's not a big deal. It's surprisingly easy to go over 1 minute and to go for a long time. Fair warning, mine does run a little bit long because I've got 6 wives to talk about, but I'll try to keep it brief. Okay, so let's get into the presentation. For many kings and queens, their lasting impact on the world is based on their policies and business affairs as a monarch. For King Henry VIII of England, his legacy is almost completely about his personal life. In 1502, their father, King Henry VII, offered 10-year-old Henry to his brother Arthur's widow, Catherine of Aragon, who you see on the right. The king did this mainly as a political move to keep his alliance with Spain, which is Catherine's home country. However, Catherine and Henry did not get married until 1509, after his father, King Henry VII, passed away. At the time, he was 17, she was 23. They were married for several years without any incident or issue, even though Henry never really loved her. In 1516, Catherine gave birth to Princess Mary. Henry was mainly upset, not happy, because Princess Mary was not a male heir to the throne. At that point, he began to take on mistresses. One of his many mistresses was Anne Boleyn. He fell madly in love with her, so much so that he wanted to annul his marriage or divorce from Catherine. However, as a Catholic, divorce is frowned upon, or it's considered a sin and was not allowed at that time. He, as a king, had full access to the Pope and begged him and asked him and demanded that the Pope allow him to be divorced from Catherine, but the Pope continuously refused. In 1533, Anne became pregnant, and he denounced his marriage to Catherine and secretly married Anne. She gave birth to a girl named Elizabeth in 1533. This is the girl that would grow up to be the famous Queen Elizabeth. To make his marriage acceptable in the eyes of God, Henry formally separated from the Catholic Church in Rome and made himself the supreme head of the Church of England. This division created quite a divide in England. There were several people in the kingdom that were still loyal to the Catholic faith, and there were several people that were considered reformers with the Church of England. So his own personal beliefs created a lot of division in his kingdom. However, everything was not all peachy keen. Anne Boleyn tried desperately to give him that male heir, but she had several miscarriages. While during that same time, Henry took on another mistress, her lady-in-waiting, Jane Seymour, seen pictured to her left. Jane Seymour was always billed as his favorite throughout history. He wanted to marry her so bad that he created an outrageous story about Anne, saying that Anne had cheated on him with her own brother, which of course was not true. She denied all the charges, but no one really loses to the king. She was beheaded, and within 24 hours of Anne's death, he married Jane Seymour. A few years later, she gave birth to Prince Edward in 1537. However, that happiness was very short-lived. She died 9 days after Prince Edward was born. He did not marry again for 3 years, and up until the end of his life, he said that Jane Seymour was his only true wife, and even after his death, while he was married to another woman, he chose to be buried next to Jane Seymour. His fourth wife was Anne of Cleves. This was completely a politically motivated marriage. He had no romantic or physical attractiveness to her. He was rumored to even have called her a Flanders mare, which is basically saying that she had a horse face. They were only married for about 6 months, which they divorced in July of 1540. She did, however, remain in England throughout her entire life and was given the honorary title of the king's sister. There are also rumors that they became great friends and confidants, and that she was one of his advisors, but that's not confirmed. Only a few weeks after his divorce in July of 1540, he then married Catherine Howard. She was 19 at the time, he was 49, so that's a 30-year age difference. During this time also, he had gained a lot of weight and he had some physical ailments, and that may have prompted the fact that she was no longer happy after a little while and cheated on him with men closer to her own age. There was a brief investigation, she was found guilty of adultery, and he had her executed in 1542. His final wife is Catherine Parr. They married in 1543. At the time, he was 52, she was 31, and had already been widowed twice. So this was her third marriage, Henry VI. Catherine Parr was a very smart, independent woman. She was well educated and took it upon herself to be active in the schooling of her stepchildren, Princess Elizabeth and Prince Edward. However, her independence and education did create some problems in their marriage because she did not always keep quiet and their opinions did not match up. At one point, she was almost arrested, which was essentially a death sentence, but she found out about it beforehand and begged for his forgiveness, and he forgave her before she could actually be arrested. They did remain married until Henry's death in 1547. All of these 6 wives and his own personal drama clearly overshadowed any political policies and even overshadow his complete reformation of the Catholic Church. Henry VIII appears to have ruled England with his libido, not with his brain. However, his legacy is long-lasting and obvious. The Church of England, which was established during his reign so that he could marry Anne Boleyn, is still a very active church to this day. Okay, so my presentation, that was the conclusion there at the end. It ran long. 6 minutes and 3 seconds. However, I cut 30 seconds off of my last revision. I could rehearse it a couple more times and probably cut it down to 4, but I don't want to speed quickly through it, and that's where I think I would find myself. It's okay if you run long. I've just shown you it is kind of easy to do, but that being said, Henry VIII had a whole lot of drama that's really interesting to talk about. Yours does not need to be that long. The big ideas that I want you to pull from mine are that you can see that all of mine have very few words on them. They are mostly pictures on the screen. And you can see there's a little heading up here and a little caption. That's about it. The rest of it is all spoken word. If you have any questions, we'll be more than glad to help you. And good luck.